As we have seen in the previous chapters, there's a lot of things that you have to take into account when you're creating a machine learning model. So when you're starting with an AI project, it is always good to ask yourself the question, am I going to build an AI component or will I buy it?
And so if you think about the 80-20 rule, 80% of the problems that you might want to solve with AI can probably be solved with a solution that's already available in the industry. So a really good example of that is the Azure Cognitive Services. Let's take a look at a system where I take an invoice, analyze it, extract values, and then use them in an application. So here we are in the Azure portal, and the first thing we want to do is create a cognitive service that is the Forms Recognizer. To create anything in Azure, you go up to the menu and click Create a Resource. To find Forms Recognizer, you can simply search for Forms, and Forms Recognizer will come up. Click Create and fill in some simple details in order to create this instance. Here's one we created earlier. Here's the icon for it. If we click into this resource, the main thing we're going to need to use are the keys and the endpoints in order to train and test our Forms Recognizer API. So what does the code look like when we start to train, retrieve training results, analyze a new form and get those results? Well, here's 4 simple curl commands that can get you started. So we need to start by training the model. To train the model, we're going to pass 5 example forms to the Forms Recognizer API, along with a content type, a subscription key, and then the link to the actual documents that I want to train on. I have 5 forms that look a little bit like this. They all have a similar format, but what we want to do is extract all of this specific information per invoice. Once I've trained my models, I can retrieve and review the training results. But one of the things that we definitely want to do is test our training, and that's where we can analyze a new form. We send it to exactly the same API, but this time we have the model ID and we pass that in from the previous calls. We pass it the content type, the subscription key, and then this time, instead of a link to the training documents, I want to send it to one single invoice to test. Once that's sent, to actually get the full results, you call the results API with the output of the analyzed form. So let's see that in action. We can see there's a large JSON response, and I can format that and view it by using Alt, Shift and F. And we can see that this call succeeded. It now has these key value pairs like name and address, etc. And as we continue down, we can see postcode, company, city, and so this has broken out all the information we need from our forms. Now I've trained the Forms Recognizer API, I want to build it into some form of automation. Here I'm going to use Azure Functions. I have some sample code that allows me to call my Forms Recognizer API endpoint using HTTP requests. I have those fields that we recognize from our form, and I've also added in some of the details such as URL endpoint, API key, and the specific model ID that I want it to recognize from. You can use the Azure option on the left in Visual Studio Code to publish this straight to an Azure function. Our Azure function is sitting inside the Azure portal, and when you go to the code and test option, you can actually test this in the portal to see if it works. So we've created a post method and we've provided it our test invoice, just like we did with the curl commands, plus a SAS token that allows us to access it. In the terminal, we can see that this executed successfully, and in the HTTP response, we can see all of those key value pairs now nicely aligned from our JSON response from Forms Recognizer.
That looked great, but there was still a good amount of code to put together. Can you create an application that can leverage AI with no code at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So AI technologies, just like all other technologies, are making their way down the democratization scale. And so you'll start finding there's software as a solution offerings to the things that you're trying to solve. So packaging them into easy to use AI and putting it in everyone's hands. Let's take a look at exactly the same scenario, but this time we're going to use the Microsoft Power Platform and AI Builder. Here I am in the Power Automate Studio. This is part of our Microsoft Power Platform, a software as a service offering for creating flows, apps, and also something I want to show you called AI Builder. So if I scroll down here and click on Build Model, AI Builder allows me to create these tailored AI models and add them to my processes as well as my applications. So we can see there's lots of different types of AI, and we can also just go to some straight away, some pre-built AI. However, we're going to go on forms processing in order to train it to recognize our Tailwind Traders invoices. I'm going to give this model a name. And click create. I'm going to tell it some of the fields that I want to extract from this invoice. So I'm going to extract name, invoice number, and total. You can also add tables, like for example that we've got in our invoice. I'm going to click next. Now I need to provide it my 5 training documents. I add them to a collection, and I'm going to upload them from local storage. They've uploaded successfully, and I can see a sample here. I'm now going to get them to analyse the document. This will identify structure, detect fields, and extract values and pairs. So it's analysed my form, and as you'll notice, it's picked out where all of the text is. Now we need to select these fields so it can pair up the key value pairs. So for name, I'm going to highlight the name just here. For invoice number, I'm going to highlight the invoice number. And for total, I'm going to select the total. I've completed one document. I just need to do this on 5 other documents. You'll notice in the document, it's actually automatically recognised these fields for me. So that was nice and quick and easy. I'm going to click next. We can now see my model summary, where the data's come from, and the details as well as the number of images that I've used to train. So I'm now going to train this model. It's going to learn about my forms so that I can submit new forms to it. We can see that my model has been trained. We can see a sample here. We can see the selected fields. Let's do a quick test to see what it does. We're analysing a form we've not seen before. And we can see that it's picked out the name, the invoice number, and the total. In order to build it into, say, an automation or an application, we actually need to publish this model. Now our model is published, we can use this model, and I'm actually going to create a new app that inserts this specific forms recognizer component on the canvas. So if I click new app, we can see we've landed in an app, and it's actually brought in this analyze forms processor widget into just a very basic app. So the first thing I'm going to do is test it out. To test out an app, I can click on the play button. I can click on the analyze button, choose an invoice, and we can see it's found the name, the invoice number, and the total. From here, I can start to personalize this app to look more like the Tailwind Traders application that their finance team will use. So in this chapter, we've seen the scale of building versus buying AI solutions. There's always trade-offs no matter what option that you choose, but knowing what is available to you is the first important step you need to take when building AI solutions.